All right, let's dive in. Terence McKenna, right? Ethnobotanist, mystic. He's a captivating figure. We're looking at him through a unique lens today, the Enneagram, specifically the social seven.
It's really fascinating, actually. The source material we have goes deep. It's not just about traits. It explores McKenna's core motivations, his fears, gives us this whole other layer to understanding his work and legacy.
So social sevens, right? That insatiable hunger for new experiences. Almost like a need to avoid feeling trapped, limited. The source material connects that directly to McKenna's intellectual rebellion, his constant questioning of authority.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at his life, it's so clear he wasn't content with the status quo, not at all. Government, scientific dogma, organized religion, McKenna pushed against all of it, with a good dose of skepticism, too. Classic social seven behavior.
And it's not just theoretical for him. He lived it. Years in the Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Exploring shamanism, becoming a huge advocate for psychedelics, even when it meant breaking the law. It's like he took that social seven fear of missing out and turned it into a life philosophy.
Precisely. A prime example, his Stone 8 theory. He suggests psychedelics were like the catalyst for human evolution. It's definitely controversial. Goes against the grain of mainstream science. But it really shows that social seven willingness to challenge norms, to explore what's out there, the uncharted territory.
And it wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. You listen to McKenna speak, and you're hooked. He weaves in humor, metaphors, these vivid stories that just pull you in. The source material calls it charlatanism in the best sense,
Mhm.
which I thought was really interesting.
It's that classic social seven way of captivating people. It's not about deception, though. Not really. It's more about presenting ideas with such conviction, such charisma that they become irresistible.
So less about tricks, more of that infectious energy,
Yeah.
making ideas so appealing you just want to hear more, even if you're not fully on board.
Exactly. And when you look at some of McKenna's more out there theories, like time wave zero, you see that knack for weaving narratives, even around the more speculative stuff. Whether you believe it or not, it's hard to deny his skill.
It's like he knew. To get people to even consider these big radical ideas, you got to grab their imagination first. I mean, come on. When he talks about modern culture as a consensual hallucination or describes psychedelic experiences as, like, shaking the monkey's watch, the imagery, you can't help but be drawn in.
And that connects with another key aspect of the social seven, doesn't it? Their hedonism. It's there in McKenna's fascination with altered states. His belief that psychedelics weren't just about exploring, but about experiencing pure joy, pleasure.
Yeah, it's like he took that social seven drive for pleasure and focused it on intellectual and spiritual delights, not just the sensory stuff. The source material calls it an Epicurean intellect. Fits him perfectly.
Absolutely. He saw pleasure as a path to transformation, both personal and collective. His whole push for psychedelics, it came from this belief that they unlock the mind's full potential.
So not hedonism in the careless sense,
Yeah.
but about seeking experiences that expand you, elevate your consciousness. Fits right in with that social seven optimism, that belief in positive change.
And speaking of seeking new experiences, McKenna wasn't satisfied staying in just one field, was he? Anthropology, botany, chaos theory, shamanism. He drew from it all, that constant eclecticism. Another social seven thing, wouldn't you say?
It's like he was always connecting the dots, right? Bringing together these different fields, creating these grand visionary theories about reality, humanity's place in it all. It's mind-boggling how wide-ranging his curiosity was.
That's the beauty of the social seven mind. They see connections where others just see walls. In McKenna's case, it led to some truly amazing ideas. Even if, well, not all of them have been backed up scientifically.
His ideas about the transformative power of psychedelics, his vision of a better, more connected world, it resonates with that social seven yearning for something better, a world that embraces possibilities, one that moves beyond the limits of today.
But of course, like with every personality type, there are strengths and challenges. With McKenna, that social seven tendency towards, I guess you could say, sensationalism could have been both a blessing and a curse.
Right, the source material definitely points that out. There's a bit of sensationalism there, for sure. Especially when it comes to his focus on those 2012 prophecies, the time wave zero idea.
Those narratives, while they're captivating, they were pretty speculative, lacking solid evidence. And that's where the shadow side of the social seven can show up. That tendency to overpromise, to get caught up in the excitement of an idea without grounding it in reality.
So where does that leave us? How do we balance appreciating McKenna's brilliance, that intellectual daring, with acknowledging the potential downsides? That's something we should definitely explore more.
And that's exactly where the Enneagram becomes such a useful tool. It helps us understand not just what someone did, but why. And with McKenna, seeing his social seven side gives us a much deeper appreciation for his genius, but also the limitations.
Yeah, it's not about ignoring the criticisms or dismissing him. It's about seeing the whole picture, the light and the shadow, using that understanding to engage with his ideas in a more thoughtful, nuanced way.
And that's what we'll continue to do. As we dive deeper into Terence McKenna, the social seven visionary, digging into McKenna like this through this social seven lens, the source material brings up something interesting. This whole idea of pain avoidance, it's really key for this type. And I'm curious, how do you see that playing out in his life?
Yeah, that's a great point. It really struck me too. When you think about it, the social seven's biggest fear, being trapped,
Yeah.
feeling limited, bored, makes you wonder if some of McKenna's, well, pursuits were a way to escape, especially his exploration of psychedelics.
It's a really thought-provoking idea, right? Think about the psychedelic experience itself. It's a temporary escape from normal reality, I mean. It's a chance to break free from everyday limits, explore these uncharted parts of your consciousness, almost like a shortcut to the novelty and excitement social sevens crave.
McKenna talked about them. Psychedelics, as these boundary-dissolving experiences, gateways to infinite possibility, connection. For someone like him, always hungry for those new perspectives, those realms must have been incredibly appealing.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about escaping physical limits, it's about going beyond the limits of the mind itself. Social sevens, they need to keep their options open. They hate feeling boxed in. Psychedelics offer that, in a way, that boundless mental landscape.
But couldn't that constant need for newness, for pushing those boundaries, lead to, well, a kind of restlessness? Trouble finding peace in the present moment?
That's a good point. It's like they're always searching for the next big thing, the next intellectual challenge, the next mind-blowing experience. And while that can lead to amazing creativity and insight, yeah, it can make it hard to just be present, to savor what's right here, right now.
We see that with McKenna, too, don't we? He wasn't just about psychedelics. He wrote constantly, spoke all the time, generating new ideas, theories. It's like his mind never stopped, always churning out these complex, interconnected concepts.
He was a master synthesizer, that's for sure. Pulling from all these different areas, ancient wisdom to modern science, creating these almost like tapestries of thought, so intricate. And while that's amazing, it does make you think. Maybe it was a way to keep some of those darker, less comfortable emotions at a distance.
Like he's always on these big intellectual adventures, exploring the universe, the possibilities of the mind, perhaps to avoid facing the more, well, mundane, maybe even painful parts of just being human.
It is a bit of a paradox, isn't it? This deep dive into the mysteries of the universe, the boundless potential of consciousness, paired with maybe this tendency to shy away from the messier parts of being human.
But I guess that's human too, right? We all have ways of dealing with discomfort, of finding things that bring us joy. Meaning, it seems like for McKenna, that was this intellectual exploration, this endless search for new ideas, new ways of seeing things. It was his way of navigating, I guess, the whole messy business of life.
And it's not just about avoiding the negative, is it? There's also a real optimism in his work. This genuine belief in transformation, in the power of psychedelics, the idea that humanity can evolve towards something better. That seems so connected to the social seven's need to see possibilities.
It's like he's saying, look, yeah, there's darkness in the world, suffering, but focus on the light, on the potential for growth, for change, for connection between all of us. And that message coming from him with all that charisma, it really resonated with people.
He really did inspire a generation to question things, to explore their own minds, to embrace the unknown and challenge the way things are. But like anyone who makes a big impact, his legacy, it's complicated, filled with brilliance and controversy.
And that's where it gets really interesting, because understanding him as a social seven, it helps us make sense of those contradictions, to see the genius, but also the potential limitations.
Exactly. And that's what we'll do as we move to the final part of our deep dive, exploring the impact McKenna had and what his story really tells us about, well, the human search for meaning, for understanding.
So we've covered a lot, haven't we? Terence McKenna, this intellectual rebel, amazing storyteller, chasing those experiences and maybe even escaping a little, all through that social seven lens. But what's left behind? What's his legacy? How do we square that brilliance with the valid criticisms?
That's the question, isn't it? And it gets to the heart of the social seven. They can be so paradoxical. On the one hand, McKenna's passion, infectious. He inspired so many people to really question things, to look inward, to embrace the mystery of it all. And that way he blended ideas from everywhere. shamanism to hard science. It opened up totally new ways of thinking about, well, reality itself.
His influence on culture is undeniable. 2012, Time Wave Zero, psychedelics and evolution, it's seeped into everything. Music, art, books, you name it. He became this icon. And his ideas, they still resonate with people who are looking for something different, something outside the mainstream.
But, as the source material points out, there's a flip side. A lot of his theories, they weren't exactly backed up by solid science. Some folks even dismissed him as more of a performer than a scholar. All talk and no action, spinning captivating stories, but not much substance.
And there's that escapism angle we talked about. If all those ideas, the focus on utopia, was partly him avoiding, I don't know, difficult emotions, real-world problems, does that change how we see his work?
This is where it gets really interesting. This is a key question for you listening. How do you reconcile it all? The good and the bad? Do you take the inspiration but acknowledge the flaws? Or do you throw the whole thing out? Say it's all just fantasy, even dangerous?
This is why the Enneagram is so helpful.
Yeah.
It's not about excusing things or ignoring criticisms. It's about seeing the motivations, the patterns that shape how someone sees the world, what they create.
Knowing McKenna was likely a social seven gives us context. We can admire his brilliance, that ability to connect the dots, that hopeful energy, but we can also watch out for those social seven traps. Overpromising, maybe avoiding hard truths, choosing novelty over, well, depth.
So what does it all mean for us, anyone intrigued by McKenna's ideas? What do we take away from this deep dive?
Don't just take A and Y thinker at face value. No matter how bright or exciting they seem, know their influences, their biases, their strengths, and their weaknesses. Think critically, just like we've been doing here.
It's about engaging with ideas actively, questioning everything, looking for different perspectives. Don't just absorb it all passively. Digest it, challenge it, make it your own.
And maybe the most important thing, even figures who are flawed, controversial, they can spark something valuable. McKenna's legacy shows us that exploring ideas, it's a journey. It takes passion and a critical eye.
So, if his theories were shaped by being a social seven, how does that change how you see his work? Something to think about as you explore the Enneagram and the world of Terence McKenna.
Captivating. And sometimes, yeah, a little confusing.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those minds open.